Who cares if I'm from a land of no man? I'm so drunk I see 4 goats, but I feel like I can live forever. Welcome to Channel 8 and a Half. Hello and thank you for joining us at Channel 8 and a Half, a show all about movies and TV and pop culture. My name is Joe Galino.
And I'm Andrew Hanna.
Andrew, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, Joe, especially since this week's episode is Watchlist Volume 2, where we discuss what we've been watching lately. Let's actually start with you, Joe. You checked out a new Netflix original, right?
I did watch. I watched the new Netflix movie that came out called The Old Guard. This was what Netflix considered to be, or what they touted as, a record-breaking movie. This is one of the most watched movies that Netflix has ever had on their platform.
Oh, interesting.
So you know what? Yeah, I thought it was like, okay, that warrants a watch, and it was okay. So do you know anything about The Old Guard?
No, I don't know. I hadn't even heard of it until you mentioned it.
Okay.
Or at least let me see if I maybe recognize the visuals, but go ahead.
I can actually read you the logline of it.
Yeah.
A covert team of immortal mercenaries are suddenly exposed and must now fight to keep their identity a secret, just as an unexpected new member is discovered. So basically, it's this group of immortals who exist, who've been alive for thousands upon thousands of years, who've gone throughout time and been fighting in all the major battles in time. The Crusades they talk about. They talk about a lot of the major wars. And so they've existed and they've helped people throughout time, the disenfranchised, things like that.
Yeah, I recognize the poster actually from Netflix.
Charlize Theron is in it. She's the big star in it. Chiwetel Ejiofor also shows up in it. Dudley Dursley from Harry Potter.
Oh, really?
He shows up in it as well. Yes. And I was very surprised because I did not know anybody other than Charlize Theron who was in it. And you know what? It was fine.
Mm-hmm.
It was long, but the premise is an interesting premise. I would say to anybody who hasn't seen it, you're not missing much if you didn't check it out, but it's an okay watch. Charlize Theron, she plays the leader of the immortal mercenary. She's been alive the oldest, right?
Yeah.
And it's directed by the same person who directed Beyond the Lights. Her name is Gina Prince Bythewood. I don't think I'm going to pronounce that correctly, but she did a couple of things that I really like. She did Beyond the Lights, which came out in 2014. And it was a really good melodrama. And she also did Love and Basketball, which is a really underrated basketball movie, which is also a melodrama, though. And you can see her melodramatic roots, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, within this action movie setting, because this is very much an action movie that takes time to really sit with the characters, and it's very deliberate in its pacing, sometimes to its detriment, because the main thrust of the movie, right? Charlize Theron and these 3 other mercenaries, they get hired by Chiwetel Ejiofor to go collect, basically some refugee kids.
Yeah.
And they realize very early on that they were set up, and that Chiwetel Ejiofor actually set them up to be killed as proof that they are immortal, that they actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
For Dudley Dursley, who runs a pharmaceutical company, and he's sort of the Lex Luthor, Mark Zuckerberg type, the very young CEO of this pharmaceutical company, and tries to exploit them, tries to blackmail them to keep their secret, and they refuse. And this is all going on while a new young person finds out that she is immortal. So they have to kind of do both things. They have to take revenge, so to speak, against Chiwetel Ejiofor and Dudley Dursley, while also guiding a new young person into sort of how this immortality thing works.
Yeah, sort of a surrogate for us as the audience, it seems like.
Exactly. And with the inclusion of the new character, and the actress is somebody that I did not know. She hasn't been in a lot of stuff. She is a Marine, a soldier. Mm-hmm. And so that's why she is very sort of uniquely qualified to take over this mercenary role. Her name is Kiki Lane. And I hadn't seen her before. I hadn't seen her in anything since. I guess she was in If Beale Street Could Talk, which I did not see. But
I didn't see it either, yeah.
Yeah, but apparently she's been in some stuff. But even with the pacing, they take the time there's a moment where she is overwhelmed by being killed. Because initially she finds this out by being slit in the throat, 15 minutes in. She's slit in the throat, she's bleeding out, and she dies. And it's a really effective death scene, right? You really do feel it. And then she wakes up in the army tent in the hospital, and she's alive and she can't figure it out. She's overwhelmed. She takes the time, the director takes the time to stay with Kiki Lane as she's sitting outside of the tent, and she puts on her like headphones, her earphones, and starts playing music. And as she's just sort of like taking the time to breathe and trying to calm herself down. And not a lot of action movies would take the time to do that.
Yeah, at
So
least these days,
it's
definitely.
exactly. So it's really
Yeah.
commendable in that way. At the same time, once the action gets going, it does that at a bunch of different places where it slows down to I mean, just a glacial pace and really kind of sucks the momentum out of it. And so I'm of two minds about it in that I'm glad that they did take the time to develop those characters and sit with them in those moments, but I also
Mhm.
wish it had kind of sped up a little bit in the middle.
Yeah, and that's the thing about films that come out exclusively on streaming services. They tend to neglect developing characters through a scene like the one that you mentioned because it might feel slow. And so they utilize exposition in lieu of that, which, in my opinion, is so much less meaningful. And as cliche as it might sound, actions speak louder than words. And I think the reason of not taking the time is because of their fear of losing the audience.
Mm.
But I think that has a lot to do with the preconceived notion that audiences have a much shorter attention span these days, which I don't think is necessarily true. I mean, look at the way that we consume television shows now. We can binge for hours at a time. So I don't think there's much merit to the theory that people have a shorter attention span when it comes to good storytelling. Something like Bright, the Will Smith movie, which also came out on Netflix. It's basically Training Day set in a fairy tale world and explores racial prejudice through the lens of like speciesism in a sense, where the orcs are thought of as lesser and are therefore the victims of bigotry in this world. And I liked Bright and the world that it presented, but I feel as though it lacked character development and almost felt afraid to take the time to explore the world in moments like the one that you mentioned because it identified itself as an action movie,
Mhm.
which I think was very much to its detriment. It sounds though with the old guard, the director was maybe trying to break that mold, but it seems the pacing is where it faltered. Rather than ramping up, it sounds like it would speed up, stop, speed up, stop.
That's what this did.
Yeah, but I still applaud that she took the time to develop the characters in a more natural manner.
There are some unnatural bits in it, though. There are some stuff. It starts off with something that I don't like. It starts off with a voiceover of Charlize Theron, who is wonderful. She's so good in the movie, and she's the best part of the movie. That and some of the action scenes, but the beginning it starts out real shaky. It starts off with a voiceover and her going all dramatic and looking out a window, being like, "I've been here before, and I ask the same questions every time."
Yeah, see, that's a great example of what I was talking about. Instead of showing us who a character is or placing them in a situation and seeing how they react, and that being what informs us of who they are, they tend to fall back on voiceover. And a lot of times I feel like that's the studios being like, oh, no one's going to get this, slap some voiceover on it.
Maybe, but it was very again melodramatic in the beginning in a way that I did not like. And this
Hmm.
director has done melodrama in, I mean, great ways in both Beyond the Lights and Love and Basketball. But it did get better. And the action scene, the very opening action scene when they first get killed and revealed,
Yeah.
it's not a great action scene. It's a very boring, shaky camera type action scene, but the rest of the action sequences in it are really great. And there's this moment, especially at the end, when you can see all of them working together, all five of them. There's five members of this team by the end, and they're working together. And all of their moments, their movements are very choreographed, and you just see them working as a team, and it's so great. And the action moves so fluidly, and the camera moves fluidly within
Yeah.
that scene. And it's really the best action scene in the movie is in Act 3. But I think that a lot of people would probably jump off in the beginning because it starts off on such shaky ground.
That's interesting. I definitely want to check it out. From just the clips that I like, the screenshots I was looking at just now, it looks like Mad Max to an extent with Charlize Theron in the
Kind of.
desert.
Oh,
Yeah.
Charlize Theron is so good though. Like there's this moment where they first get killed, right? And then they
Hmm.
come back to life, but you don't know that. Or in theory, you're not supposed to know that if you didn't know the premise going in. And she looks almost like sad that she's dead. It's a very you can just see it in her performance, in her eyes. She's just laying there and she looks sad and just vacant as she's
Yeah.
laying there
Yeah.
in a way that I found very affecting. And again, she just she's really good in it, and the rest of the movie I don't think lives up to her.
Yeah, I feel like she was definitely kind of wedged in there to carry the film in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, and she's such a great performer. I mean, the action movies with Mad Max, obviously. She can do comedy with A Million Ways to Die in the West, which is a movie that I
Mhm.
actually don't mind. I like that movie. I am in the minority in that opinion, but
I need to finish that movie. I started it and then something happened where I couldn't finish it. I need to continue with it.
the plot doesn't matter. You can pick it up anytime.
It seems like one of those short-lived films where it's so topical and references so many current events and so many current pop culture references that it just does not age well.
Kind of.
Which is the Family Guy issue.
Yeah.
But what do you feel as though you wish you would have seen differently in this? Like, what do you think would have made this a good film?
I feel like if they paced it a little bit quicker in the middle of it, that it really would have helped because it
Mhm.
does slow down so much in the middle that I kind of lost interest. I also did not care really that much about the other 3 original members of the team. There's a moment where there's a betrayal in the team,
Yeah.
and you see it coming a mile away. You know, you immediately when the character that betrays them comes on, I went, "Well, that guy's gonna betray them."
Mhm.
I did like that Chiwetel Ejiofor was immediately revealed to be the person who betrays them, the first person to betray them. Like, he's the setup betrayal.
Yeah, they didn't lean on it
Yeah,
as the twist in the end.
exactly, because you also knew that the person who hires you for a job in these types of scenarios is going to stab you in the back.
Mhm.
It's just gonna happen. So I'm glad that they went, "Okay, 15 minutes in, we know immediately that Chiwetel Ejiofor set them up."
Okay.
I also like I mean, I did like the world of it, like, the idea of these immortal soldiers battling throughout time, that's a great idea, and it is based on a comic book. It's based on a comic book by a guy named Greg Rucka, or
Mhm.
Ruka. Again, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's funny because I saw the name, and I didn't know that he wrote this, but I know him as a guy who wrote the novelization to a comic book storyline of Batman called No Man's Land, where they blow up all the bridges to Gotham City, and the
Oh, like the 3rd film.
yes, they took a lot of inspiration from it for The Dark Knight Rises, where they blow up
Yeah.
the bridges and they have to survive on their own. The city is just cut off.
Yeah.
That is a great storyline, and I actually read that in the comic book version, and I also read the novelization first, though, and he wrote that novelization because I love that premise because it's a very
Mhm.
Escape from New York type premise. And so I didn't know he wrote this movie either because he wrote the screenplay and he wrote the comic. So I like him. I like this director. I'm not sure where this went wrong.
Speaking of Batman's No Man's Land, though, I watched 1917,
Mhm.
and from my understanding, you haven't watched this, right?
No, I have not watched this one, but I know a lot about it obviously because it was a very heavy Oscar favorite last year, and
Yeah.
obviously it did not win Best Picture. Parasite won Best Picture, but and that was an upset. Everybody thought that 1917 was going to win, and Parasite was the big shocker. So was it worthy of all of that Oscar hype?
Yes. Yes, definitely. To give you a little bit of backstory, I'm not going to give too much away because I do think it is a film that you should experience without knowing too much. But 1917 was directed by Sam Mendes, best known for American Beauty and Spectre, Skyfall, and a ton of other films. But 1917 is a film set in World War One, and it follows Lance Corporals Blake and Schofield as they are given a mission by a commanding officer of the British Armed Forces to deliver an urgent message to another battalion, ordering that battalion to call off an attack that is set to take place the following day. And the attack is on the retreating German army. However, the British received intelligence that suggests that this is actually a strategic retreat by the Germans and that they actually plan to ambush the attacking forces. But they have no way of communicating this because the Germans have severed their telephone lines and therefore cannot tell the attacking battalion to call off the attack. And so it's up to our main characters, Blake and Schofield, to deliver this message in person. And the reason why Blake is chosen for this mission is very similar to Saving Private Ryan. His brother is a lieutenant in the battalion that's meant to attack the Germans, and he needs to deliver it to them in time because if the attack were to proceed, he would be amongst the ambush soldiers. So it kind of gives him motivation to actually make it. So the film essentially follows these two main characters as they set out on the journey, and it requires them to travel across no man's land, into abandoned German trenches, and
Hey, callback.
across, there you go, plant and payoff, and across miles of war zone that was previously occupied by the German army. So there's a lot of obstacles between them and the end goal. And time is really of the essence because they need to make it in time before the attack takes place the next day.
Yeah, huge stakes though. Like automatically
Yes,
when you said that too, right? So they're on a ticking clock because they got to get there by tomorrow. Main character's brother is in it, so that's stakes right there. You know, he's got to save his brother
exactly.
because he's going to die. Immediately, you got two things right there that are huge dramatic points.
Yeah, it gives you enough motivation and
Hmm.
enough to care for them to actually make it. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this film, and I think it definitely did deserve the attention and the awards that it received. I feel as though it filled the gaps that Dunkirk did not fill for me. To me, Dunkirk felt very empty and sort of cold and distant,
Well, it was
which
a Christopher Nolan movie.
but I feel like Christopher Nolan does play off on e emotion and nostalgia very heavily. I mean, think about Interstellar. It was all about emotion and nostalgia.
That's his only emotional movie, though. I mean, everything else, like The Prestige is really cold. Memento is really cold. Even The
They're
Dark Knight,
cold.
like even his Batman trilogy is Batman is a very kind of cold and distant
No,
Batman.
they are cold, but the character's motivation is emotionally driven. Like in Inception, his end goal is to see his kids, and
His
the
dead wife,
emotional kind of, yeah, his dead
and in
wife, that
Memento, his dead
conflict.
wife, and in
Exact
The
well,
Prestige,
his dead
his dead
other dead
wife.
wife. I feel like he does not like his wife, and his wife needs to just get the hint. If Christopher Nolan's wife shows up dead one day, we know what happened. Anyway, to me, it's actually the reason why I didn't watch 1917 for that. You really like that, Joe?
And in Interstellar, which I can't remember if there's a dead
There
wife,
is. She
but
does.
she's not
She's
there.
not in
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
that's true. I remember I've only seen Interstellar once. It was a long time ago. I saw it with you,
Yeah.
but it was like 3 hours long. Probably no wives in that movie either.
No, no, definitely not. No time for the wives.
No.
I'm going to space with the boys, babe. But the reason I didn't see 1917 is actually because of Dunkirk. Because I didn't connect to it very very much, and it seemed very similar to it. But it was great at being such a huge film. 1917 was great at being such a huge film set in a great war, but it was able to maintain a certain intimacy in every scene. And we aren't provided much backstory on our characters, but they weaved in these great moments that give us a sense of who the characters are, which I like more than the usual method that war movies kind of lean on when it comes to character development, which is usually conveyed to us in the form of dialogue as they kind of talk about their lives back home and who's waiting for them on the other
Exactly.
side, that kind of thing. Like, what are you going to do when you get back? And I like that they left that out and allowed us to get to know the characters in a way that we actually get to know strangers, which is through their actions and the subtext they provide when speaking about current events taking place and sort of the way they make decisions in high stakes
Isn't this
situations.
isn't this a movie that was the conceit is all in one shot? It's just a tracking shot following them.
That was actually what I was going to talk about next. Is I love the cinematography, which is an obvious thing about this, but I didn't know going into it that it was meant to seem like one long shot, sort of like Alfred Hitchcock's
Rope.
Rope or Inarritu's Birdman. I thought it was going to be more like the way that Cuarón did it in Children of Men, where he kind of speckled it throughout,
Yeah.
where some scenes were all in one shot. But I didn't know it was the entire thing. I didn't realize it until I actually rewinded like 3 minutes into the movie. I'm like, wait, we haven't cut away yet. And I had seen articles and things talking about how they shot the long shots in 1917, but I didn't ever watch them, so I didn't know upfront that that was what they were going for.
Yeah.
But I thought it was perfect for this film because time is the biggest obstacle our main characters must overcome, and because the film is taking place in real time, subconsciously it adds to the tension that for every minute we sit and watch is a minute lost as they try to get to the other battalion in time.
You're
And I
with
think it
them the whole
really,
time.
yeah, exactly, nonstop. And I think it really worked to heighten the stakes and serve the story rather than, coming off as gimmicky or visual self-indulgence.
Yeah. That's the criticism that got laid at Birdman, was that it was too gimmicky.
I was thinking, I was like, "Oh, like, I like that in this movie it added to the story rather than took away from it," but I didn't think that it took away from Birdman because Birdman is essentially about the theater, and the theater is all in one take in a sense. So I think that it still was sort of meta for that specific
Yeah.
storyline, so I didn't mind it that much with Birdman. I actually think that it was utilized in a meaningful way in that film.
I agree with you in that sense, and that it is kind of it's trying to mimic the speed of a live production on the screen.
Exactly, and sort of it is all about the conflict of this film actor trying to get through a Broadway production or a theater production, and so the film kind of goes through that struggle with him by all taking place in one shot in a
Mhm.
sense. So yeah, I agree. But Roger Deakins is a cinematographer who won for best cinematography, and for
Mhm.
good reason, because it really was astounding how they executed a lot of these long scenes. And though the camera is always moving, he was able to still find these beautiful compositions. So like he would be switching composition constantly, but every single one felt like a painting. Like they had these beautiful moments, and the camera felt very conscious. Like it was almost as if it was a third character going on the journey, and at times we would leave the main character and kind of take a walk around the scene and then meet back up with the main character to
Mm.
find him kind of in a different place, which I thought was really cool because you got a sense of the set and what was taking
Yeah,
place.
the surroundings.
Exactly, and you're taking it all in just as the main characters are. And the interesting thing is they didn't design the sets until they rehearsed because they needed to make the sets, so let's say like a trench, as long as it takes to walk the length of it
Mm.
because it is all in real time, which I thought added just like a whole nother level of meticulous planning that they had to do
Of
in order
realism.
to, yeah, exactly. Yeah. You really did feel like it was all very much in the moment.
Tangible, like, quite
Exactly.
literally very real. Like, they had to build the trench, they had to walk this trench.
Yeah, exactly. And there's this beautiful scene where Schofield is running through the ruins of this town, and the entire scene is lit up by flares, like actual flares. And they would put them on strings and kind of like shoot them over the set. And they would create these small scale models of every set in pre production and would use kind of like an LED light to see how the
Oh,
light would fall through the arches and pillars. So it was truly meticulously planned out. It was just, it felt like a feat of film. Like it was exciting to watch because you're like, "Oh wow, this is really cool to see."
and then the scene happens where he gets shot in the shoulder and they have to do surgery, and they're like, "Alright, bring in the shotgun."
and then you have to watch all of that, drink the whiskey. But like that's also another good point is they captured the brutality of trench warfare very well. Like there's a moment where Schofield is moving like a piece of barbed wire to help Blake get by, and it slips and cuts his
Ooh,
hand and punctures him. And you're just thinking like, "Oh crap, that's going to get infected over the course of this whole thing."
yeah.
But then he immediately falls into a pit and plunges his injured hand into the chest, like the open chest of a dead soldier. And you're like, "Oh yeah, that's definitely getting infected." And you just, again, it brings me back to like the intimacy of most of the scenes. In war films, you're used to seeing severed limbs, getting shot, and that's not necessarily absent in this film, but they definitely use something seemingly small that is going to cause bigger problems for the character in the future, and it makes it a lot more tense.
Like that scene in the Jackass movie where they're giving each other paper cuts in between the fingers.
Just like that, just like
Exactly,
that.
just like that.
That's exactly the scene that popped in my head. I was like, "You know what this reminds me of is
Is
Jackass,"
Jackass is Johnny Knoxville getting paper cuts in between his toes.
which actually is not very pleasant, but
No, that's so you can't watch that. It's so hard to watch.
no,
When
it is.
literally when you said the his hand got sliced open by the barbed wire though, that's literally what I thought of because that moment in Jackass will haunt you forever.
Well, and he's going to have to be using that
Yes.
hand to like get through a lot of crap in the future. And so it adds to the tension. And there's another scene, actually I'm not going to talk about it because you haven't seen it, but again, most of the action sequences are usually with maybe 2 to 3 characters, no more than that. So it departed from the big action sequences and went for more,
Character based.
yeah, character-based conflict.
Because it's not an action movie in the traditional way of, all right, so it's this side and it's this side, and they're gonna shoot at each other, and then some space robots are gonna come in, and they're gonna transform into cars, and then Shia LaBeouf is gonna yell. Like,
No, it
that's
felt
not
yeah, it felt more like Lord of the Rings, honestly, like Sam and
Frodo?
Sam and Frodo.
Well, yeah,
Like,
because you're with them the
they
whole
have to go
time.
on this whole quest to, deliver this message, and I actually like that the 2 main characters are not very well known because
It
you
would have
have
taken out
no
of it.
yeah, you have no preconceived notion of who would survive because
Yeah.
either one of them could die, and I thought that was very effective. But there were a lot of great cameos by some big
Well, because
actors.
Colin Firth gives him the orders, right? He's the
Yeah,
one that
he's
gives
kind of
them
the
the assignment.
exactly, and then Andy Scott, Moriarty from Sherlock,
Yes, Andrew
plays like
Scott's in the trailer too, and I
yeah,
love him in
his scene was so fun. Like he just looked like he embodied that character so well because he's the one who allows them to go into no man's land, so they to leave the trenches, and he's like, okay, well, I guess if you want to do it, good luck. I mean,
Yeah.
here's a flare gun. If you get shot, just throw it back to us because we don't have another one. Like he doesn't care. He's just like, good luck. I don't give a crap. Just don't pull me into this.
Like, look, this sounds like a you thing, man.
Yeah.
Your problem.
Exactly. Mark
Uh,
Strong plays a captain that helps them halfway through.
oh,
I think,
really?
yeah, I think
Oh,
he's
I didn't know
really
that.
underrated. I love him. And then Benedict Cumberbatch plays the colonel that has to receive the command, so they have to take that command to them.
Oh, so they got Sherlock and Moriarty in there. That's good.
Blake's brother is played by Richard Madden, who is Robb Stark.
Oh, no kidding.
So like I usually I get annoyed by cameos by big actors in films like these because I feel like it takes you out and
Yeah.
is very distracting. But I didn't mind it in this because they all primarily played officers. I think it added to their importance and stature in the scene. And I also like that Robb Stark was playing the brother because he is everyone's brother that went off to war. And he has such a kind of a lovable persona that
He
the
was Prince
scene
Charming.
was he really?
Yeah, he was
No,
Prince
I didn't
Charming
know
in
that.
Cinderella.
Oh. The
As
Brandy
you would as
Cinderella?
yeah, in the new one, in the live
Not
action one.
Brandy's the old one from ABC. You don't remember that one?
Oh, I thought you no, I didn't get it. I completely skipped over that. No, not in the Brandy one.
I was like, "Oh, wow, so you haven't seen it." But I did like that Rob was in it because I love him so much, and most people he's such a likable character, but it was a very emotional scene, and I think it made a greater impact. Also, the one of the 2 main characters, Blake, is Tommen Baratheon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of Game of Thrones peeps, but yeah, I think overall I really liked it. It surprisingly received a lot of criticism because it felt like a video game because it really was like, oh, move to this place and this place, which did occur to me at one point, but
Right.
I didn't mind it that much. I feel like for a war film to take the structure of a quest like Lord of the Rings, I enjoyed it probably much more than I would have if it was just a traditional war film. It's also
Yeah.
about World War One, and we don't get that many World War One
No,
films.
but it was hard to distinguish. You wouldn't know by the trailer it was World War One. Distinguishing between World War One and World War Two is hard, just on
Eh,
screen.
I think if you know the nature, which is like World War One was known by trench warfare,
True.
but then also the uniforms, you can tell that way. But if you don't know much, which I don't think a lot of people know much about World War One because it isn't depicted as much, I agree. It could have been set in World War Two, and it
Yeah.
still likely would have been just fine because it isn't based on any specific events. There are events that are very similar to this because in World War One, communication was a big issue, and so they would send these like smaller guys that are harder to hit
Right.
to deliver these messages. But overall, definitely watch it. Let me know what you think. I really did enjoy it.
I need to see it. Should this have won over Parasite, or should Parasite have been Best Picture?
I think Parasite deserved Best Picture over this. I think this would have deserved it if it was up against something else. Again, it's timing when it comes to those types of situations.
Yeah.
But I think Parasite was making a greater statement about society as a whole and was more important given the issues we're currently facing. Parasite was essentially about class conflict, the disparity between the rich and the poor, which is prevalent in most
Mhm.
countries and sort of under scrutiny more than ever. So it was more relevant. Also, in a time of American isolationism, it almost felt like Parasite being the first foreign film to win Best Picture was a rebuke of that philosophy.
Yeah, it spoke to the current moment more. We've seen war films.
Yeah. And I actually do appreciate that 1917 included Indian soldiers, because that is something that isn't talked about, is the people of color that fought in World War One, whether it's the people from Africa or the Indian soldiers that were coaxed into doing it because they were led to believe that it might lead them to Indian independence, because at the time they were a
Yeah.
colony. So I think that it was modern in the sense that it did take those stories into account, and I appreciated that about this. But I think Parasite was more important for the moment.
That's all of what Spike Lee's new movie, Da 5 Bloods, that was also a Netflix movie that came out. It's all about these 5 black soldiers who fought in Vietnam and them going back to Vietnam years later.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did that come out before or after Black Klansman?
It came out like a month ago.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
I haven't even heard of this. God. I
Yeah.
haven't been on Netflix that much, actually. Like, I've been mostly on HBO Max and Disney Plus lately.
Yeah.
I need to get back on Netflix. Apparently, they're coming out with some good content. It's just a lot of it's just so inundating. Like, there's so much coming out on Netflix
Yeah.
that I'm like, I don't even know what to watch anymore. Especially during quarantine, you're watching the things that make you feel fuzzy inside because everything's crappy outside.
Yeah, exactly. Let's turn on a harrowing Vietnam movie.
Yeah. I don't want to hear about how much more crappy the world is.
Exactly. But we did
Oh,
watch
Lord.
something. We did watch
Together.
something
Yeah.
together. The last one we're gonna talk about, which is much more light than 1917 or The Old Guard, which has absolutely no comedy in it whatsoever. We watched the new Hulu movie called Palm Springs, starring Andy Samberg and Kristen Milone. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. She was the mother
Yeah.
in How I Met Your Mother. And
Oh, that's what she's from?
yeah,
Oh, I never got to the end of How I Met Your Mother.
you're better off.
I know that. That's why I never went back
It's
to
fine.
it.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, before we go on though, I want to preface this is we're likely going into not only spoilers, but even just the premise of this movie and talking about it. If you have not watched it, if you know nothing about it, end the episode now, go watch it, and then come back and listen to our feedback, because I think that this film, I think both of us agree, right, Joe, is this film is better served if you know nothing going in.
I agree.
So definitely watch it before listening to anything we're about to say right now. But make sure you come back.
Correct.
We'll wait here while you watch it.
We'll always be here. But now that you've all watched it and come back,
Yep.
I think weirdly, even if you know the premise going in, it subverts the expectation of you knowing the premise.
I agree. I agree in that, because I did know you had accidentally alluded to it on accident. Like,
Yes, I did.
You said one word, and I was like, oh, so it's like this, and then I was like, okay, I already know what it is going through. But even then, I felt I didn't feel like I was missing anything. So I guess we're okay in saying that it
Yeah.
is Groundhog Day in a more modern setting. There's another movie that I thought it was very much like, and I don't think you've seen it because not a lot of people have seen it.
What?
Um, it wasn't a time loop movie. The One I Love.
Oh, I haven't seen that. No, you're right.
The One I Love is actually very good. I definitely do recommend it. They go to a vacation home that is meant to help couples, like it's like kind of a couples therapy retreat, and they end up getting trapped in this house
Oh, I've heard of this. I know.
with
I know
like,
what you're talking about.
yeah, like twin versions of themselves, or
Yeah.
like the version of themselves that their spouse wishes they were.
Yeah.
And so it is very similar in that way, because they're both kind of going through it and navigating through this supernatural event. So it definitely is a combination of The One I Love and Groundhog Day.
The pitch is, what if you got stuck in a time loop at a wedding? So basically, it's the best day of somebody's life that you're just stuck there reliving over and over and over and over and over. And it is genius in that I loved this movie. So what did you think of it?
I loved it a
I
lot.
loved it so much.
I was blown away, and it excited me. Like, when I was watching it, I was excited to see something like this, because
Yes.
I feel like there's not enough films like this where other people might have taken a film like, and I'm like, oh, let's do Groundhog Day again, like a remake in a sense, or a reboot. This did not do that. This took the archetype and turned it on its head. You know, you're going through that first day and he's acting kind of weird, and I'm like, okay, this is very odd.
Right?
And then it occurred to me, and I was like, oh my
He's
God,
in the
has
middle
he
of the time
already?
loop already.
Yeah. And that blew my mind, dude. That in and of itself, if you would have just
I
showed me
know.
that and told me that, that was the only thing that was different about it, I would have been completely impressed, because I thought that was very clever, is to have us meet him while he has been in this time loop for years, if not decades at this
Yeah.
point.
It was genius, and he's just dancing around, and you think he's being a buffoon. So he
Yeah.
does the speech, and he just goes up there and he wings it, and he's like, "This is the most amazing speech that anyone's ever given at a wedding. He's the greatest American orator ever born."
Yeah.
And you're like, "This is insane." And then he's just navigating throughout the party, and you kind of realize, "Oh, he knows exactly what's happening. Oh,
Yeah.
he knows he knows everything that's happening. Oh, he's been in this for a long time." And that's when he starts
Yeah.
to hit on or talk to Kristen Melodi's character. And then he has
Who's
he has
the bride's
every
sister.
the bride's sister who, and he has everything to say. He knows exactly what moves to make. And that's when I went, this movie's incredible. And it's like 8 minutes in.
Yeah, I mean, at first the pacing, it was just moving so quickly, and he seemed like this completely aloof character who's also just doing all the right things and making things happen, and you're just like, "Wait, what?" Like, this is almost contradictory to itself, where someone who is as aloof as Andy Samberg's character would not give a speech that was that great or be able to come on to the bride's sister so
Yes.
effectively. And then also they make out or have this like intimate moment while they're right outside of the window
Hmm.
to a room where his girlfriend, Andy Samberg's girlfriend, is hooking up with another guy at the wedding. And so you're just like, this is so weird and so like,
And he's
and then
just
it's
so
like,
blasé about it.
yeah.
He's like, ah, whatever.
And you're like, is there someone really out there that's that just
Good at
like,
life.
I mean, or just over it, like that he doesn't even
Yeah. Oh,
care?
yeah.
Like
True.
so, like,
And
and
then and then when they go out, he and Kristen Melody go out to the desert, and they're just sort of looking at the desert. And then J.K. Simmons shows up, as we find out later, someone who has also been stuck in this time loop, and shoots him with an arrow, a bow and arrow.
yeah.
And then Kristen Melody is freaking out, and you're going, "Wait, what?"
That was the moment that cemented it, that he had already been in it, because I was like, "Okay, I have a feeling this is where it's going," but I wasn't sure. Like, I didn't want to go there because my mind can sometimes get stuck in that where I'm, like, expecting that to be the twist, and it
Yeah.
never does happen, and I feel, like, let down. So I was like, "No, don't make any decisions as to what the plot's about." Then he gets shot by an arrow, and he's not surprised by it. He's more like,
Yeah.
"Oh, not again." And you're like, "Wait, what is happening?"
Where he's yelling over his shoulder. He's like, "Roy, you dick."
Yeah. And then, like,
And she's freaking out, and he's just like, "Ugh." And I knew that was J.K. Simmons, so I didn't know J.K.
"Me
Simmons was in
too."
this. I knew it was
Yeah,
J.K. Simmons by the walk and just by like
exactly.
his build before he even said
Dude,
anything.
I completely agree. Like, I was like, "Oh, that's J.K. Simmons for a fact."
Mhm.
Because you don't see his face even in
No.
that scene, not until later. I feel like J.K. Simmons is at the point in his career where he could just do whatever he wants. He
Oh,
could just show up
100%.
in these like fun indie movies and then just either yell at a kid for not playing the drums the way he wants, or shoot another kid in the
Did you
shoulder
see
with an arrow.
did you see they reference Whiplash in this, in one of the deaths?
Wait, really?
So there's one of the death scenes, it's really fast when they go through a montage of every time that J.K. Simmons' his character has killed Andy Samberg. And in one of the scenes, he is wearing a black turtleneck and he's got a whip. And it's really fast, and you'd blink if you miss it.
Yeah, no, I remember that
Uh-huh.
scene.
And I think it's supposed to be a Whiplash nod. I
Oh
think so.
my god, no, you're right. You're right. 'Cause
All of
this
those
also
deaths were
this
genius. All of
this
them.
went to Sundance and got bought for, like, a record amount. I forgot what it was. It was, like, 17.5 million.
Oh, no, hold on. It's, didn't it get bought for 17.5 million and 69 cents to break
Yes.
the other record? Because
Yeah.
69 cents is hilarious.
Yeah, that's right. I
Because
just saw that.
that's the kind of thing that the people who made this movie would do, and it is funny.
Well, it's Andy Samberg,
Yeah.
right? And at first I was like, another stupid, goofy movie that Andy Samberg," and I was like, actually, he was perfect in
Yeah, he
this.
was.
He did so well, and I thought she was phenomenal. I enjoyed her performance. I
No,
think
she was
that
great.
she just played it off so well, and she was believable, and you cared about her, you cared about
Mhm.
him. They didn't go too heavy on the romantic comedy tropes that a lot of films fall into. They were just, I don't know, it was just so straightforward storytelling that I just thoroughly enjoyed it all the way through. There wasn't a part that I think, "Oh, I could have done without it."
No, the entire thing. And this one is, again, only 87 minutes. Last week we talked about a movie that was 87 minutes, or 2 weeks ago on Watchlist.
I was gonna
87
talk about
minutes,
this, yeah.
Artemis Fowl. 87 minutes. Hey, at least it's not your whole life. This one, 87 minutes. It's tight. It's so
Mhm.
funny. Like, I wanted more, but I'm glad
And
it was this length.
there was enough, and this is proof that you can create characters that are strong and that are likable and that you can empathize with in 87 minutes. You get enough about these characters.
Yeah,
A lot of movies or shows, when they do these time loop situations, they'll play the same scene over and over again, and you're almost like, "Okay, I'm over it."
yeah,
No one day in this played out the same way. Like, it
mhm.
kept it fresh throughout the whole film, that I don't know, I
No,
really, really loved everything about
it
this.
moved quickly, but it moved perfectly the
I
entire time,
Yes,
and in
exactly.
the midpoint too, when they discover or when she we discover as the audience, but she then, comes to grips with the fact that she slept with the bride. Nope, she slept with the groom on the day before the wedding, and she runs away, and then we discover that he also lied to her about sleeping with her
In the past,
in the
yeah.
past, and all of these things just compound on top of one
Mhm.
another in just such a perfect way.
And I like that I didn't necessarily see it coming, or I wasn't
I didn't
spending
either.
time trying to, like, figure out who was in the shower, because with every time that she woke up, the hints that someone was in that shower grew stronger and stronger. And the first time that she wakes up, she hears the shower turn on, and then she looks over, and that continues to play throughout the film. But it wasn't until he finally comes out and we don't see his face, he doesn't say a word, but that was the right moment where I was like, oh my God, I know who it is. And
Mhm.
you didn't anticipate it. I don't feel like it was drawn out for no reason. I think it came at the right time, and you also came to the realization at the right time for it to really have an
Yeah.
impact.
No, everything about this movie I loved. I thought it was
Yeah.
incredible.
No, I agree. Did you watch so I didn't know until I was reading something about it until after, that there is a an after credit scene.
Yes.
So I thought that was interesting. I like that. I was worried that it was going to do an Inception thing and you weren't going to know whether or not they broke out.
Oh, see, this is what I wanted to talk about too. I would have been perfectly happy with them ending the movie on being sucked into the time loop or time cave, whatever it is, and
Yeah.
blowing it up and we never knowing. I would have been perfectly fine with that.
I would have been okay with it. I think in that moment I was like, okay, if it ends here,
I was
I think the
anticipating it ending
film
there. That's why
I had a
I
yeah.
literally thought, okay, they're going to be sucked into the time loop and it's going to be both of them looking at each other's eyes and credits. We never find out.
I had a feeling it would do that, and I think, again, it subverted expectation because that was what you were thinking the whole time, and then they just opened up on the day after. So,
With them in the pool.
yeah, with them in the pool, and you still don't know until he says, "Oh, should I go pick up my dog?" And then the other family shows up,
But then there are
that owns that
dinosaurs
house.
out in the horizon. So it's like, is this a
Yeah, like, you don't know if he's, like, stuck in a time loop, or they're
Mhm.
still, like,
In
in
some
an
sort of weird
alternate.
trippy thing?
Yeah.
Because she says, "We don't know if this will work. We don't know where we're gonna end up. We don't know if we're gonna just be blown out of time, a million years from now. They don't know if it's gonna work." And it doesn't matter really. That's not the point.
Exactly, and that's why I feel like I would have been annoyed, but still completely fine, I agree, if it had ended at that point, because I wasn't sure how else they would end it without it being too cheesy.
Yeah.
But I also do think that there is enough evidence to suggest that there is still an issue with time, because even when J.K. Simmons comes back to Andy Samberg in the end, the post-credit scene, he doesn't know who he is. So that
Yeah.
means they're in an alternate universe or an alternate timeline. And I like that there wasn't like an outside character that explained to them how to get out of it. She kind of takes
Yeah.
the initiative,
Yeah.
and the way that they get out of it isn't some fairy tale like you had to know the value of life
They
before
make
you can
fun of
move
that in the
on.
beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, she's like, "Oh, I'm going to do something selfless."
Yes.
Which truly isn't selfless when you
No.
really think about it. If anything, it's selfish.
Because you find out what she says, and she says, what I'm
Exactly.
assuming is, "Hey, I slept with the groom just to let you know."
Yeah. And even the side characters were all so much fun. I enjoyed them all. The people in the bar,
Mhm.
some of the groomsmen, the guy in the cowboy hat, his
Yeah.
girlfriend was so like did a good job on making you hate her right off the bat.
Yeah, and they do a thing with the old woman who talks to their grandma, I guess, or her grandma, where she
Yeah.
says, "Now that you're leaving, like, dot, dot, dot," and you go, "Wait, did she know that this was some sort of time loop?" What does
And
she
even
know?
she looks at her like, "Wait,
Yeah,
what?"
like she
Yeah.
knows.
There's so much there for you to just truly enjoy it all the way through. I don't feel like it
Mhm.
faltered at any point. I think all the way through it was a solid.
Yeah, tight 87 minutes. You're in, you're out.
But yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up.
I think so too.
Well, with that, we'd love to hear from you. Have you seen The Old Guard, 1917, or Palm Springs? Did you agree or disagree with anything we discussed? Let us know on YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find all those links on channel8.5.com. That's channel8.5, completely spelled out.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider liking and sharing with family and friends.
We have new episodes every Thursday. Until next time, my name is Joe Galena.
And I'm Andrew Hanna, and this is Channel 8.5.